All right, welcome everybody to our session today on LLM program requirements and the application process. My name is Kaya Koban. I am the Education USA advisor to Moldova. We as Education USA, we're always here to help you. So if you have additional questions that we do not answer or extra questions that don't pertain to the LLM process, please reach out to your Education USA Center. I would like to introduce Vicki. She is our guest speaker today. She is the admissions counselor for the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law. So she is the legal expert here. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Vicki.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to be giving you an overview on what you can expect to be required of you when you're applying to LLM programs. So feel free to take pictures on your phone or snapshots. It's to my understanding that you'll be able to have access to a recording of this event, so you could always rewatch it. And our email address and our school website is right at the bottom of the slide. So you can always just contact me directly if you have any additional questions or if you are interested in pursuing a degree at Maryland Carey Law. So without further ado, since I know I only have you all for half an hour, let's get started. So to begin, I'm going to give a very brief overview of the application checklist, but don't worry, I will then cover them a little bit more in depth throughout the presentation. So to begin, on lsac.org, you will be required to make an account. It's important that you familiarize yourself with that platform because that is where you will be submitting your application and all of your supporting documents. It's very important that you submit everything through LSAC because that is needed in order for the documents to be considered valid and to be processed for evaluation by admissions committee for admission, and in our case for merit-based scholarship consideration as well. You will need to disclose your background information, submit a statement of scholarly intent, your resume or CV, whichever one you have prepared, or whichever one is more fitting for your accomplishments. And LSAC will then put together a report called the CAS report, Credential Assembly Service, and that report consists of your transcripts from all higher education institutions and your letters of recommendation. For Maryland Carey, we do only require 2, but you can submit up to 4. So it's important to know how many are required at each law school that you are looking to apply to. We also require English proficiency because that is necessary to succeed in our LLM program. So for us, you would need to take either the TOEFL or the IELTS, and you show English proficiency with a TOEFL score of at least a 90 and an IELTS score of at least a 7. If you're unfamiliar with those exams, I will provide an overview on them as well in this presentation. So for your letters of recommendation, you want to pick people that can really speak to your academic abilities and your work ethic. And a good tip is supplying your recommenders with a copy of your resume and a copy of your statement of scholarly intent. So they have all of your highlighting accomplishments right in front of them, and they're able to really cultivate a strong letter on your behalf. You want to make sure that they can attest to your personal qualities as well. So be sure to pick people that you have had a good and strong relationship with. It could be from a former supervisor, a current supervisor, colleagues, and even clients if that's applicable to you. I know for at least Maryland Carey, we like to see 1 letter from a former professor, but we do understand that that's not always feasible. So they really can be from anybody. We just ask that you stay away from family members, of course. And something that we see every year that I would like to know is you want to make sure that your recommender is, like I mentioned, somebody that you have a close relationship with and that you're not really taking into consideration their title, because their relationship is more important than what their job title is. So what I mean by that is every year we get letters of recommendation from an applicant whose family friend happens to be a judge. So they think that because the letter is coming from a judge, then that would be great. But more often than not, that letter tends to be very general. It doesn't really tell us about your work ethic and your academic abilities. So make sure that you are choosing your direct supervisor or somebody that knows your performance in a workplace environment or in a classroom capacity. And for your resume or your CV, whichever one you choose to submit, it should more or less be a timeline of your life. You want to make sure that it includes your education, your professional experience, volunteer experience, memberships, awards, languages, study abroad experiences that you've had, really anything that you are proud of and you want the admissions committee to know about you. Now, addendums. You are more than welcome to submit an addendum to address any component of your application, and your addendum should be 1 to 3 paragraphs in length. You really don't want it to be longer than those 1 to 3 paragraphs because you don't want it to overshadow any other component of your application. And when you're writing an addendum, you want to make sure that the admissions committee will be able to read it and not have any further follow-up questions for you. That's also a test to your ability to write concisely and clearly, which are important characteristics in attorneys, of course. Now for writing samples, I know I touched a little bit on the TOEFL or IELTS. So if you believe that you are proficient in English, most schools do allow you to submit writing samples, and applicants are sometimes given this option in an effort to waive either that TOEFL or IELTS exam. Like I said, it is optional for most schools, and these writing samples are typically memos, briefs, journal articles, or any article of writing that you take great pride in that you might have done in school previously. You want to make sure that it follows a neat and a cohesive format. So usually that means making it double spaced, and it should be about 5 to 15 pages in length. Most importantly, you should make sure that your writing sample is error-free before submitting it. So aside from yourself proofreading it, I would encourage you to designate somebody else just to check your work before you submit it. Because more often than not, at least for myself, I find that even with texting, before I send a message, I'll proof my message. And then once I sent it, I realized that there was a silly typo or a grammatical error there. And you want to make sure that that's avoided because our eyes begin to just gloss over information and we start to see what we think we wrote. So you just want to make sure that you are avoiding that. And you can do that by just having somebody else catch those mistakes before you submit this statement. The TOEFL, that acronym stands for Test of English as a Foreign Language, and this is a standardized test that measures a test taker's mastery of the English language. It is divided into 4 sections, and those sections are reading, listening, speaking, and writing, and this test is about 4.5 hours long. The scoring is out of 120 points, so each of the 4 sections is worth 30. And it's important to keep in mind that this test is valid for up to 2 years. So you want to make sure that when you're taking it, it's aligning with when you're planning on enrolling in an LLM program so that that score is still valid and you can avoid having to retake it. And now that brings me to availability. You can take this exam as many times as you'd like, as long as the exam dates are within 12 days of each other. So hypothetically, I imagine that nobody wants to do this, but if you caught yourself being in this scenario, you could take the exam twice in 1 month, once in the beginning and once in the end. But again, I don't think anyone is jumping out of their seat to do that, but it's just good information to know so that you know all of your options. And the IELTS, that acronym stands for the International English Language Testing System. This exam assesses your abilities in listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And unlike the TOEFL, this one's much shorter. It takes about 2 hours and 45 minutes to complete. And the scoring is not out of 120 points like the TOEFL. This one is using a 9-band scale. So if you scored a band score of a 1, that means that you are a non-user of the English language. But if you score a band score of a 9, that means that you are considered an expert English speaker. In terms of availability, it is offered in more than 1,600 locations worldwide, including more than 50 locations in the United States. So you want to make sure that you have access, that you know where the closest place is to wherever you are located, just for convenience and accessibility purposes. And there are 2 types of IELTS. There's an academic and a general training. So listening and speaking for both of those exams are the same, but where they differ are on reading and writing sections, because the vocabulary will be tailored to either higher education and what you can expect your vocabulary to look like in the classroom, or general training, so what you can expect the vocabulary to be in a work environment and in your everyday job. So your statement of scholarly intent. We often get a lot of questions about this component of the application because students really want to make themselves stand out. They know that admissions committees everywhere are receiving hundreds, if not thousands, of these statements, so they want to make sure that theirs is formulated in a way that's best equipped to help them succeed. So before you begin writing this statement, you should start brainstorming about what you want to write about so that you have a clear idea and your paper is not going in 100 different directions. So maybe have somebody give you a mock interview and ask you what it is that you plan to do in law school, why you want to go to law school, why maybe that school in particular. So in our instance, why Maryland Carey Law? This is information that the admissions committee wants to see so that they know if you're a serious candidate or not and if you've thought this decision through. So maybe free writing is a good idea, just being able to get all of your thoughts down on paper and then being able to go back and use some of that information on this statement. So you can get information from your resume. You could talk about challenges that you've handled, accomplishments, goals for law school or your career. And you want to make sure that you have a clear outline so that you are hitting all the key points that you want the admissions committee to know about you. Getting started is often the hardest part, but once you overcome figuring out what it is that you want to write about, it all kind of just comes together for you. You want to make sure that you're also being specific. So don't write in sweeping statements. You want to make sure that you are providing examples. So I'll give some examples of what we commonly see. So you want to go to law school to help people, but why a law degree and not tech? So pursue a social work degree, etc. So maybe give us more information than you just want to help people, because you could do that in a lot of different fields. So how do you think you can help people with a law degree, with an LLM degree? So you may want to save the world or have had an experience that changed the way you view the world. And if that is the case, make that story unique to you. So provide us with details, provide the reader with a picture. So have a strong introductory and concluding paragraph. Think about what you did rather than what you witnessed. So we want to know what actions you've done and maybe not what actions you've seen other people do. Know your audience. Professional school statement where several people read it. So you want to make sure that maybe you're leaving political biases out of it, or you're using professional language and not profanity. These are all important things to remember in order to have a strong statement. You want to be personal on this statement. So talk about your own background or your story. I commonly get the question, is there an example statement of scholarly intent? No, there is no example because all of them are individualized to you. That's why they are personal statements. You want to focus on yourself. So it is okay to talk about a mentor or a family member or whoever it is that you want to just bring up. But ultimately, this essay should be about you and what you can add to the legal community as a student at the institution that you're planning on enrolling in. Remember, you are the main character. So you are the person that you should be bringing up the most in this article of writing. Okay, just a little bit more information on how to make your statement stand out. You want to make sure that you're following directions. And I know you're probably all like, Vicki, that is common sense. Obviously, I'm going to follow directions, but you would be surprised how many times we receive statements that we could tell students just mass sent to LLM programs that they're applying to. And we can tell because our prompt was completely ignored. They didn't follow our word count or didn't answer questions that we had asked of them. So making sure that you're following each law school's prompt that they provided to you as closely as you can, because again, paying close attention to detail is a good characteristic in somebody who wants to further their career in the law community. You want to make sure that your quality of writing is strong, that you are catching all of those grammatical errors and those little typos, and that you are writing concisely. You don't want to be rambling on and on. You want to make sure that you are really getting to the point and capturing the reader as much as you can. You don't want to lose them with over disclosing little details that are kind of insignificant to the story. And you want to make sure that you're choosing a topic or theme that flows throughout the entire paper. So a lot of times students tell me that they've had a full life of accomplishments or things that they want to write about, but you don't want to write about too many things because you don't have that many pages to write with. So for us, we ask that your statement be around 1,000 words. So it's important that you stay right around that range. Keep in mind, we're not going through your statement with a word counter, but you do want to stay within the word count that we asked of you. And that goes for any law school that you're applying to. So you want to pick a topic or a theme that you can write about throughout the duration of the paper. And then if you wish to mention anything else, just keep in mind that you also have a resume or a CV that the admissions committee will be reading with those other accomplishments that maybe you didn't get a chance to write about on this statement in particular. And now I'm just going to go over just some common errors that we typically see on these statements that you can easily avoid. So typos, grammatical and spelling errors. It just shows that you don't care, that you don't take the process seriously, and you don't have a required lawyer skill, which is, again, attention to detail. It shows that you're not reading the prompt or the question, and sending the wrong statement of scholarly intent to the wrong school is a common mistake. So you want to make sure that you're double checking that. For instance, if you're writing a statement of scholarly intent for Maryland Carey Law, that you are submitting it to us and not Georgetown Law. So you just want to catch those silly little errors because they can be costly when it comes to your admissions decision. We often see that people leave their track changes on. You want to make sure that that's off so that we don't see that on our end. And a lot of times people are just rewriting their resume in chronological order on their statement of scholarly intent. You're already submitting your resume or your CV, so we don't need to see that information twice. You want to make sure that your statement is more or less telling the reader a story. You can avoid quotes and you can avoid inserting poetry or things like that. It should really be personal and your own words. And since we have seen so many statements of scholarly intent, we can more or less tell when they are not being genuine. So you want to make sure that you are really channeling yourself and what you want to do in law school, because everyone's experience is unique. So we want to know how you got to this place where pursuing your LLM degree is the next natural step in your career. So some frequently asked questions about the statement of scholarly intent. What is the most compelling essay you have read? This is a trick question because we have read so many, and a lot of students have done a good job of formulating a strong statement by having a very picturesque introduction where the reader is just tied in right away and they want to know exactly what the applicant is going to write about just based off of that introduction. Can I submit the same statement of scholarly intent to each law school? No, because every law school has a different prompt. So you want to make sure that you're tailoring the essay a little bit just to align with each law school's prompt. This doesn't mean having to rewrite your essay every single time you plan on submitting it to a law school, but it's just tweaking it a little bit just to follow each law school's instructions that were provided for this piece. Is there a website where I can find a good template? No, there is no template. This should be authentic and coming just from you. Does this essay really matter? Yes. Many people apply with similar academic credentials and objective indicators. So this essay is your opportunity to let yourself shine through and let the admissions committee get a little bit of insight as to what has shaped your perspective to be what it is today, what brought you to this place, and how that information might be valuable for classroom discussions. And how long should my essay be? Can it exceed the requirements? So at Maryland Carey, the statement should be around 1,000 words. And for most law schools, we're not going through it with a word count, but we do have an idea of about how long it should be and what that looks like. So you want to make sure that you are right around that range, not 1,000 words exactly, but it can be a little bit over or a little bit under. So don't be upset if you are at 900 words or 1,200 words. That's still within that range. So here's just a little test before you do submit your statement. You want to make sure that the reader who is reading your statement of scholarly intent can answer these 3 questions. And if they can, then you know that this is a strong piece and you did a good job putting it together. So you want to make sure that a member of the admissions committee can answer why you want to attend our LLM program. So this is your chance to let us know that you've done your research on the institution and maybe you want to come to this law school because of the location, the reputation, or program X. The second question, do they demonstrate knowledge about that institution in particular? And the third one, have you thought this decision through? So this is your opportunity to let them know what you plan on doing with this LLM degree once you have earned it. So maybe that's sitting for the bar exam, or maybe you're just choosing to specialize in one of our programs. All right, so I know I gave you all a ton of information, so please feel free to jot down my email address or our phone number and reach out to our office. I'm more than happy to be a resource for you, but right now I believe we still have some time, so I'm more than happy to answer any questions that any of you might still have.
So there was one question in the chat. Does focusing on positive mean not to concentrate on academic or professional challenges that we had in the past?
Yes. So you don't want any of the negative things to overshadow the other components of your application, because most admissions committee do a holistic approach to your application submitted. So that means that every component is taken into consideration and evaluated front and back. So if you did have challenges throughout your higher education career, maybe attaching an addendum that is 1 to 3 paragraphs in length addressing why you had these challenges should be suffice for the admissions committee to gain insight as to what these challenges were and to give you peace of mind that your transcripts maybe aren't indicative of your academic abilities and aren't indicative of the law school student or LLM student that you will be in the future.
I would say kind of in that thread, just to, I don't know if I'm continuing Maritz's thought, but if you had kind of like a negative professional experience, but you wanted to elaborate on how you change that into a positive, would that be okay for your essay?
Yes, that's perfect. You can always bring that negative into a positive, because a lot of times hardship is what makes us stronger or better individuals. And these experiences are what help us grow and learn. So you can certainly mention it and then say how that molded you or how that changed your perspective to be what it is today. Because ultimately, whatever it is has brought you to the point where you want to apply for an LLM program, which is a great thing.
Great. While we wait for some of the attendees, if they have additional questions, I wanted to ask your opinion. How does one typically, or what advice would you give on how to research law schools, as there are quite a few options in the US?
Yes. I know it's overwhelming. There are a lot of law schools, and my biggest piece of advice is to get your information when you're researching law schools from trusted resources. So LSAC can be your best friend. They have a very helpful platform where you can get accurate reports on law schools and pinpoint what it is that you're looking for and where you will be the best fit. So LSAC, checking ABA reports, each law school has one, and going on law schools' websites. You want to make sure that you're not getting information from those fake internet pages that just rank law schools, because those are inaccurate. And you want to stay off of Reddit or any of those platforms where people are just throwing their individual opinions on law schools. So again, ABA credits, law school websites, and LSAC platform. Those will be your best friends when making a list of your desired law schools to apply to.
I'm not sure if this is something you can answer, but do law schools provide financial aid, in case students are wondering? I know financial aid is always a concern for international students.
Yes. Great question. Finances are something that a lot of students ask us about, of course, because it is a hefty fee to take on, right? So you want to make sure that you're budgeting adequately. So to begin, at Maryland Carey, because it varies by law school, so you really want to make sure that you're doing your research on each of them, because we are a state institution. So you want to make sure if it's a private or a state institution, a private or public, and we are a public state institution. So we have a flat rate LLM tuition fee of about $28,000. So that means that whether you are a Maryland resident, out of state, from out of state, or an international student, you can expect your LLM tuition to be around $28,000. And for us, all of our LLM applicants are automatically considered for merit-based scholarships when they submit their application. So based on your initial application, we will review it, not only for admissions purposes, but also for merit-based aid. And the amount that we typically award falls within the range of $5,000 to $15,000. Unfortunately, most law schools, there might be a few exceptions, don't offer financial aid for international students, but that's where you can really look into other resources that they have. So for us, we have domestic institutions such as MECU, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, that have worked with our international students in the past to help them with financing their LLM degree. So each law school has different resources for students. You just want to make sure that you're asking those questions.
Great, thanks. Going to like almost the beginning of the process, any tips for taking the LSAT, which is a unique exam?
Yes. So the LSAT is not a knowledge-based exam. So you really want to make sure, in an ideal world, that you are studying for about 3 to 5 months to really prepare yourself. My favorite resource to recommend to students is Khan Academy, and I will just spell it out in the chat box right now. It is a free and online platform. So I know I have a few people already sold right there. We love free things, and online makes it super convenient. They allow you to take practice LSAT exams, and they use real questions from previous LSATs. So this allows you to assess your strengths and weaknesses and be able to tailor your studying accordingly. And also, in an ideal world, you would plan to take the LSAT the fall before the year that you plan on enrolling. This can give you the peace of mind in knowing that in case you had to take it again, you still have that time to be able to study. Now you know what to expect and you can retake it. You want to be sure that you're setting yourself up for success and that you are not cramming for this exam for your own mental health, and that you can retake it if need be. Because for merit-based aid, your LSAT score and your GPA do take higher importance. So a few extra points could save you thousands of dollars down the line.
Vicky, there's a great question in the chat. And I will go ahead and read it out loud in case others cannot see it. So some schools also demand examples of legal writing. I wonder whether it is okay to send the translated versions of our reports or articles. As the student understands, she knows that the schools want to check our legal writing specifically in English, but in this case, I'm just presenting them a translated version, which generally cannot be translated by myself. So I feel like that's very unique. How do schools tackle that?
Right. So for international students, we do ask that your transcripts do get translated typically through LSAC, but for writing or letters of recommendation, we do ask that you go through certified translators so that we have the correct translation. And you can't translate it by yourself, because we have had in the past students say that letters of recommendation, they translated it themselves from Spanish to English. And then, like, at least for myself, I speak Spanish. So I could see if the recommender in Spanish wrote something and then if it wasn't properly translated in English. So you do just have to go through a certified translator.
And so would the student use any certified translator, or would they contact the law school to find out specifically if the school had a certain company they wanted them to use?
Yes, they could contact the law school directly for resources and trusted certified translators by us, or more often than not, it is stamped certified. So we will just know if it is a trusted translating company.
And so following in that same thread, what is the main goal of presenting legal writing? So
in presenting legal writing, first, I can only speak to our law school, but sometimes we ask you to submit writing samples only if you wish to waive the TOEFL or the IELTS exams, because international students will often tell us that maybe they did undergrad in the United States in an English-speaking institution or in an English-speaking institution outside of the United States. So they have a good understanding of the English language and they don't want to sit for these exams. So in their case, we will ask them to submit a statement addressing their relationship with the English language and then some writing samples, just so that we can see how proficiently they write in the English language, because it is necessary to succeed in our LLM program.
So then in that case, some law schools may not require legal writing. They will require an English proficiency exam.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, it varies law school to law school. And for ourselves, we don't require it if you are going to submit your TOEFL or IELTS score.
Okay. Thanks. That's like, I'm learning something new as well.
Yeah.
There's one other question, and I would assume this varies from school to school, but will we have an opportunity of an application fee waiver for the fall semester of 2021? And I guess this is just going in with the whole pandemic situation.
Yes. So I'm more than happy to provide anyone that is interested with a fee waiver. It'll waive the $70 application fee. Just send me an email and I could just send it back to you, because I can't just send it in the chat here because each code is specific for each student that would like one. So I will just write my email address in the all panelists and attendees chat so that you can just send us an email, tell me that you sat through this presentation, and I will just send you that code.
And so we are right at the time mark. I want to thank our attendees for your questions, for attending, for your active listening. If you do know of students or participants who wanted to attend, the session is recorded, and so we will be sharing these after the fact. I also encourage you, if you do have additional questions, to reach out to either the admissions advisors at the prospective schools that you're thinking about joining, and also to contact the Education USA Center in your area, because they are always a resource. If they don't know the answer to your question, they will find the answer to your question through our network of colleagues. So there are always plenty of resources for you and to you when you have questions about your education. So Vicki, I thank you for coming. And you're great.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I've had a great time talking about the LLM requirements. And I just want to thank all the attendees for taking this time to sit through my presentation as well. I'll be in my booth till 3 p.m. Eastern time. So feel free to visit me if you do have any additional questions. And again, Kaya, thank you. It was so nice being able to work with you. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their night, if it's nighttime where you are.
Great. Well, thanks, y'all. Have a great day and enjoy the fair. Visit those booths.
Yes, thank you. Bye.